from About Face. All too soon, Colonel Johns received orders back to Berlin as chief of intelligence. So now this whole thing that they'd gone through with sending this force to reinforce the French, British, and American troops on the ground in Berlin, this is pretty much done. All too soon, Colonel Johns received orders back to Berlin as chief of intelligence. Most of us had known the magic couldn't last forever. But it didn't change the fact that we were incredibly sad to see him go. On 15 January 1962, the battle group fell out smartly for its final review before our favorite soldier. The weather was bitterly cold, but no one noticed. We were all too busy standing tall and greedily soaking in the colonel's farewell address. Johns was a leader who taught by example, so most of the points he made weren't exactly new to us. But to hear it in a single speech, this great man's basic philosophy of soldiering was like being letting in on the secret ingredients of some magical formula. To wit, strive to do small things well. Be a doer and a self-starter. Aggressiveness and initiative are two most admired qualities in a leader, but you also must put your feet up and think. So there's a little dichotomy he's hitting on. Yeah, you got to be aggressive, but you got to think. Strive for self-improvement through constant self-evaluation. You got to be humble. Never be satisfied. Ask of any project, how can it be done better? Don't over-inspect or over-supervise. Allow your leaders to make mistakes in training so they can profit from the errors and not make them in combat. Decentralized command. Keep the troops informed. Telling them what, how, and why builds their confidence. The harder the training, the more the troops will brag. Boom. Remember that guy that asked the last podcast, how do I improve the morale of a group? Get them to have pride? Mm-hmm. Train hard. Yeah. Next, enthusiasm, fairness, and moral and physical courage, 4 of the most important aspects of leadership. Enthusiasm, fairness, and moral and physical courage. Next, showmanship, a vital technique of leadership. That's interesting. Mm-hmm. And there's a bunch of, in About Face, Hackworth, he specifies some of these things that he would that Glover Johns would do showmanship wise. He'd walk down the range and he was a really good shot with a rifle, and apparently he would have a guy throw a quarter, like a coin, up in the air, and he'd shoot it because he was such a good shot. That and another thing he did, he's about to give a speech somewhere, and in sort of a mixed audience, but a bunch of German sort of political people, Glover Johns gets up and just gives the speech in German. All right, next. The ability to speak and write well. 2 essential tools of leadership. Boom. Next, there is a salient difference between profanity and obscenity. While a leader employs profanity tempered with discretion, he never uses obscenities. Next, have consideration for others. Next, yelling detracts from your dignity. Take your men aside and counsel them. Next, understand and use judgment. Know when to stop fighting for something you believe is right. Discuss and argue your point of view until a decision is made, and then support the decision wholeheartedly. Last, stay ahead of your boss. When Johns had finished, Colonel Couch gave the order to pass in review, and company by company we marched by with just that little extra precision. Our shoes, uniforms, and brass earlier attended to provide just that little extra sparkle. As was the custom, the company commanders peeled off after their units passed in the review stand and congregated for a final goodbye. Johns had watched the parade with tears in his eyes. The tears remained as he stood at attention.